There was a big discussion that hit Twitter this past week about educational content in the FGC. Now, for those of you that don't know me very well, before I started video editing and before I got into the FGC, I was a high school teacher. So if we're going to talk about education, I got some thoughts, especially because when I started video editing educational content for the FGC. Things like cross-counter training and James Chen's first attack, right? All the way back in 2014, 2015, I think. 2016? I think it might have been 2015, 2016. Anyway, so I got some thoughts about this educational content in the FGC. We did go over some of it in the morning streams. However, I wanted to hash it out on the show for the bigger audience. So I'm going to toss it over to Ilan on the top left. He has all of the information on educational content in the FGC and what's missing. Ilan, it's your turn. Hey, just taking a nap up here. Damn it. Hi. We're going to talk about educational content in the FGC. So, for those of you that were not aware, there was a tweet posted by Sir Elijah that said, "Sincere question, looking for as many responses as possible. Is there a lack of FGC content that aims to help people get better? It seems most how-to/tutorial vids lack the implication portion of it all, the whys behind decision making. They seem to miss that deeper perspective." So the answer to Elijah's question is yes and no. When Street Fighter V was coming out, and right before Street Fighter V was coming out, that is where a lot of the super educational content was being made, right? We had James Chen doing first attack. We had cross-counter training. Flo did the flowchart tutorial series, which I also edited. So there was a lot of educational content that went into the deeper whys. I specifically remember editing the flowchart episode for footsies, right? And Flo was teaching people about the concept of footsies. I edited the first attack where James Chen was explaining. I think he was explaining specifically like the concept of getting your opponent to do what you want, right? Which was very interesting. And cross-counter training had everything, right? Like that was when Gutex released the book, right? With like how to train and all that other stuff. But if you look at it from today's point of view, there is almost none, right? There are like some guides here and there. However, the proliferation of knowledge in the FGC is no longer in content, right? Why is that? First, educational content is so difficult to make, right? You could be the best damn player. You could be Daigo. You could be like Punk. You can be Zen. You can be, who won Evo Japan? NL. You could be the best player that will ever exist on the earth. But if you don't know how to teach, you are not going to be able to do anything, right? You're just going to be a great player, and you're not going to be able to get information from in here to out here. When we were talking about this during our early streams earlier this week, which I think might have been yesterday, I don't quite remember. They all blend in. We specifically talked about how educational content is very hard to make, and it's also very hard to consume. It's extremely hard to consume, right? The internet is meant to get your attention and to get you to click things and to get you to get like the dopamine receptors like firing on all cylinders and just like get your attention and move it from place to place, right? You're not meant to sit down and think about one thing for more than 20 minutes. The internet wants you to go which way every 5 minutes or less, right? Everybody's trying to get you to click something. Everybody's trying to get you to look at their shit. So when you start talking about educational content, it's impossible to disseminate knowledge. It's impossible to extend knowledge via content. Making it is also extremely difficult because the balance of teaching a lesson and making it engaging, worthwhile, effective, efficient, and consistent is borderline impossible, right? If you look at James Chen's first attacks, they are absolutely wonderful pieces of information, right? However, each video is like anywhere between like 30 minutes to an hour. 30 minutes to an hour, right? And again, it's so difficult to like really buckle down, sit down and watch something, especially when you're on YouTube. You look at the right side of the screen, it's just all a bunch of thumbnails trying to get you to click on it, right? On top of that, you can't just watch one video and be done with it. You have to watch the whole thing. It, like he said it himself, it's a college course, right? You have to go through the entire thing. So what is the solution, right? What is the solution for us to have more creative content? There are two solutions. First, knowledge is being disseminated more in the social aspect of the FGC than in the content aspect of the FGC, right? People who go to tournaments, people who grind with their friends, people who go to locals, that's where the knowledge is kind of being disseminated more nowadays, right? And it's easier that way because having that social connection is something that helps keep you engaged, and you're playing the game, you're doing things. It's a lot easier for your dopamine receptors to fire off when you're having a conversation with someone, and when something strikes or when something clicks, have the other person there also have it click with you. The other part about educational content is, aside from all of those other difficulties, not a lot of people are gonna watch it. You know, I can make the best damn course on spacing, right? Which I kind of did, and I proved it. During one of the early streams, I sat down, I made like a tiny little lesson plan for spacing. We had exercises, and then I played a match and won after not playing Street Fighter for months because we practiced spacing. So getting lesson plans and making sure that everything is super highly organized and efficient is a lot of work on the front end. Then editing, making sure it looks good, making sure it fits the attention span, making sure that it attracts viewers. It's borderline impossible, right? So the solution to this is to have not necessarily an actual course, but like a teaching session, right? I can speak to you, you can speak to me, I can give you information, you can ask me questions, etc., etc. You can take notes if you so damn choose. I can do lesson plans, etc., etc. However, again, it's difficult to stay doing it as well. Because the other thing too is, let's look at it this way, right? How many people have told you, I'm gonna grind this game and I'm gonna learn it? I'm guilty of this too. I'm gonna learn this game and I'm gonna get really good at it. They play it for 3 days, and then on the 4th day they stop playing it. 5th day they stop playing it, and you're like, hey, what's happening? You're not logging in, you're not putting in the time. It's like, life gets in the way, right? It's too much work, right? When it comes to put up or shut up, when you have to sit down and do work, 80% of the time people are going to go do something else that's more fun, right? So in that sense, educational content, unfortunately, is impossible to consume. I think the best ways to provide educational content is, and we talked a little bit about this morning, is they have these events in Japan that I find very interesting. And I wish we could have something similar here in the US. However, because of shitty infrastructure and because of lack of resources, I don't think it's going to be at all possible. However, in Japan, they have these events where pros will all meet at a certain town, right? Like there will be a big tournament and everybody will get to play. They'll have casuals, they'll have the tournaments. The pros will give like panel talks, discussions. Like you as a quote unquote normal human being will get to interact with the pros, ask questions, learn. That stuff I think is super helpful, right? Especially when we get top players involved. Why? Why would we want to get top players involved in education? Why is that a thing? Look, I can teach you how to play Street Fighter. I can teach you how to play Tekken. I can teach you how to play Guilty Gear, right? However, there's a concept in giving speeches and in teaching called establishing your credibility. I ain't never won nothing, so why the hell should people trust me, right? Like I can literally like write up the best stuff ever, and because I don't have the credibility for it, not gonna be able to teach. Which is, that's the nature of the beast. So having the top players involved and having these types of discussions, having players travel to places and play with people, share information, share knowledge, that is, I think, where most of the knowledge sharing is going to be coming from nowadays, right? And Olsen saying that L.I. was specifically looking for videos on the mental game. And in that regard, the FGC doesn't have very many player analysis videos. I don't know if I agree with that. And here's why. You can go watch Sajam watch a tournament, right? And he'll specifically pause through stuff and he'll show key moments. Is it in-depth analysis? No. Is it like frame-by-frame analysis that High Fight does? No. But it's part of it, right? High Fight's frame by frame analysis are really cool as well. James Chen, I think, does something very similar. Frame Advantage on YouTube with UK Gang was so good. I don't think I've ever heard of that. I'll have to look that up. See, and that's the other thing. It's like people can make the best content ever, but because there's so much stuff out there, chances are we're probably never going to see it, right? Which is very unfortunate. So that's the big discussion is how do we then start, or how can we best use our time to teach the people that want to be taught, right? Because there are, I'm sure, a lot of people who are going to get into Street Fighter 6 and are going to want to learn how to play, especially because there's that big million, right? Which then will mean that they're playing for the wrong reasons, but that's another discussion for another day. There are going to be a lot of people who are going to be getting into Street Fighter through Street Fighter 6. There are going to be a lot of people who are just getting into Street Fighter now through Street Fighter 5 and are going to want to learn how to play. It's difficult. It's difficult. I genuinely think James Chen, I was watching his Tuesday show. It was Tuesday show. Or he was having this discussion, and his solution, which I thought was very interesting, and it was a very good way of kind of mimicking the offline social aspect of it, but in game, is to have a party mode where you can get a couple friends together, you all go into your own training rooms, and then one person at a time plays a ranked match, and everybody gets to watch and they discuss, right? And that discussion is what's going to help. Having that party mode, as it were, is most likely that is going to be the big catalyst for people learning. And if you're doing that, even if you don't have a pro player, even if none of you are necessarily good players, just having people watching and discussing is going to force you to think critically about the game you're playing. And at the end of the day, that's all there is to it, right? The more you think about it, the more you try to be creative, the more you try to figure stuff out, the better you will get. And to Olsen's point, the issue is that there is not enough very concise and very focused content. Yeah, that was something I actually brought up when I was doing the stream on, I think it was yesterday. I really think it was yesterday. Maybe it was 2 days ago. I genuinely don't remember when I did it. But I did a stream where I formulated a lesson plan around spacing. And I had, legit, I had the introduction. We had exercise number 1. We had reinforcement of exercise number 1. We had exercise number 2. We had reinforcement of exercise number 2, which was also a reinforcement of exercise number 1. And then application, right? And at the end, I reviewed everything again, blah, 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 blah. Getting all of that done is damn near impossible in a 5 minute, in a 5 minute video, right? And that's where it's difficult. Is one of the really unfortunate things about fighting games is that the concepts that we deal with are so foreign compared to other video games, right? And they're so specialized, so foreign, and so intricate that giving somebody even the tiniest foothold is a chore in and of itself. And Squidly asks, do you think there are other people out there who both are knowledgeable in fighting games and have experience in education? And what roles do wikis serve in educating people with fighting games? So, first of all, I'd like to think I'm one of those people, right? Where I am knowledgeable in fighting games and have experience in education. Somebody else that I know used to be an educator or is still an educator is Samurai, right? I think Samurai was an elementary teacher, if I'm remembering correctly. And at the end of the day, education or educating is a skill on its own that anybody can learn, but it's going to take a lot of work, right? And in this day and age where every second is a second that somebody can spend clicking on something else, making sure that the content of the educational pieces are engaging enough for people to stick with you and not get bored is kind of the big problem, right? Because at the end of the day, learning is challenging, right? Learning is challenging. Learning is not the easiest thing. I can tell you, I've tried to take online courses and then I just find myself watching YouTube videos of cats falling off of the scratching posts, right? But to Squidly's point about wikis, I actually really agree with Olsen. Olsen in the chat is saying wikis should replace Twitter as a resource, but it's been very difficult to shake the habit of posting a thing on Twitter. Yeah, it's Twitter and Discord, right? Granted, Discords are now adding the forum threads, right? Which I find very interesting. But ultimately, having the wikis be the central point of information, because that's what it used to be, right? Before Street Fighter V and before Guilty Gear Strive, before Tekken 7, there was a website for every occasion, right? There was Test Your Might for Mortal Kombat. There was Dust Loop for anime. There was Tekken Zaibatsu for Tekken. And I think Street Fighter was it just Shoryuken? So there were very specialized websites that people would go to that were forums and had wikis that everybody shared their information on. And because of the nature of those forums, I'm sure if you look for it, they're still probably there, right? But because, again, the information seems to be very much on a word of mouth type of level again, especially when we're talking about Twitter and stuff where things are very fleeting, right? you can post the coolest tech on Twitter and people be like, hey, this is great tech. Give it a week and it's gone. Right? So I think what needs to happen is this. The best way to solve this problem of a lack of educational content in the FGC is two solutions. One, like Olsen was saying, going back to wikis, right, or forums. Discords, I think Discords, while they can be good, I think it's too difficult for people to find where to go, right? But if we can find one central place where we can all share that knowledge, that will definitely help. And the other thing is, because creating content, educational content, is damn near impossible to get right, I think the education has to happen at tournaments. Like literally in a classroom setting, right? Not that I'm saying like we should have like college level courses on like fucking footsies and set play or whatever. What I'm saying is getting a bunch of people together at a tournament and presenting information, discussing that information, applying that information. It is going to come down to having an in-person classroom setting. I genuinely think that's going to be the big solution to this. Why? Content on YouTube, on TikTok, or literally anywhere else is going to be impossible to be efficient enough to keep people's attention, right? Too many distractions, too many things that are not going to be useful for anyone. Having something be in a classroom setting, kind of like a panel, and discussing it and building out a full lesson plan at a tournament is going to help, because it's harder for people to lose interest, right? Because you're there to play fighting games. You're there already thinking about fighting games. So having that discussion and having information being shared like this is going to absolutely help. I almost want to put something together to see if it actually does help or not. I'm going to see if I can hit up James Chen and a couple other people, see if we can do something. Because I would be very curious to try that, you know. But with that said, is it possible to make educational content that is useful and engaging enough for people to stick around? Absolutely. Is it going to take a shit ton of work? Absolutely. Is the reward for the work going to be suitable? Are you going to get rewarded enough for your hard work by putting this content out there? Hell nah. Again, consumption is so difficult, right? Consuming content is almost as difficult as creating it now, just because of the way the internet is. To Joe's point, yes, there is a lack of educational FGC content, especially diving deeper into more complex concepts. The solution is to take that shit offline. Literally save that shit for nationals. But yeah, I genuinely think that's going to be the big solution. I almost really do want to get with James Chen is to see if we can set something up like that, like an actual classroom setting at a tournament.